my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. This is a channel where I typically like to make videos about books as well as videos about homeschooling, mostly book related. So today's video is my March book wrap up. And it has just been kind of a crazy month with all of the shutdowns and lockdowns, everything going on with the coronavirus, that it's made for a little bit of a crazy reading month for me. I read 5 books, which is good. That's kind of average for me. But what was a little crazy is I literally picked up 2 regular books and 2 audiobooks, and I just couldn't get through them. They're not necessarily DNFs for me. I want to read them. They're good books. I'm interested. They just weren't interesting enough, if that makes sense. My brain has been a little bit distracted with all the news, and my husband's now home, and it just shifts things around. So it's been a little bit crazy. But I still have some fun books to share with you today. The first book I read this month was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And I actually have a review for that book, and I'll link it above, so I won't get into too much detail for this, but if you're interested in this book, please go see my review. I have a hard copy of this, but I lent it to my sister-in-law because the libraries are closed, so she needed some good books, and I recommended this one. The book is about this party that's being given on the behalf of Evelyn Hardcastle. But the problem is she ends up murdered. So the book is about solving her murder, basically. The twist is that the day repeats itself in a kind of a Groundhog's Day style. And there's this main character named Aiden who is really in charge of figuring out the mystery. And he does this through 8 different witnesses. His perspective comes from within those people, so he kind of embodies them with their quirks and their likes, their dislikes, and it can hinder him or help him, or they can be really smart or really not so smart. But he is still within them gathering information that will help him hopefully solve her murder. I actually ended up giving it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, kind of twisty, confusing, which I do like in mysteries. I do recommend reading this book fairly quickly. See my review because I talk about that, but it does help. I only gave it 4 stars because I'm still not sure about the ending. I really liked the ending and I didn't, so I parked at a 4 stars for this. I loved it. It's really entertaining. Definitely recommend it, especially if you want to get distracted and pulled into a different world right now. So the second book I read this month was a Ruth Ware book. I've seen her name and her books recommended by a number of booktubers, and so I picked up this book, The Death of Mrs Westaway, and I enjoyed it. So basically what this book is about is it's about this girl, Harriet, who receives in the mail a letter that basically tells her, like, her grandma has died and she has inherited money. They need her to come to the funeral and to the estate to work things out. And she is a woman who's kind of down on her luck. She doesn't have anybody, no family, no friends. She has debt. She sees this as an opportunity to potentially get some money to help her out. And the problem is that she knows that this is not her grandmother. She goes through her mother's things and she sees the name of her grandmother, and that does not match the woman who died. But she decides to go anyway with the idea to kind of scam them. And so that is what happens. So she goes, she meets the family, and then you get to know the family and their interactions with each other, and there's some kind of intense family drama that you learn about, and there are definitely some a little bit scary parts, so I did appreciate that. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It comes down to, and I don't know if there's a good term for this, but it comes down to the fact that they just didn't ask the obvious question. And I think that it was bugging me the whole time, because like as they were working things out and discussing things, I'm like, well, just ask that question. That would solve it. Just ask that question. And I really wanted her to, and she just never did. And then at the end, that ended up kind of being the plot twist, that if she would have just asked the obvious smart question, 200 pages earlier, they wouldn't have ended up where they did. And that kind of stuff just kind of bugs me. It's because it's almost like the author took an idea and then wrote it backwards, if that makes sense, and tried to fit it, but it wasn't actually logical. A logical person would have probably asked those questions. I got pulled into the story. I got pulled into the kind of creepiness of the estate. I got pulled into the main character. I liked her, other than the fact I think she could have been smarter. It's a solid 3 star for me. Could have been better, but it was still enjoyable. So that was my first Ruth Ware. I'll probably read some of her other ones just to see if I like them. So the next thing I read this month was The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden. So this is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy, and this one comes after The Bear and the Nightingale. And I loved The Bear and the Nightingale. I've been I've been talking about it a lot on this channel, how much I really enjoyed that book. And this one was equally good. The story is about this girl named Vasya, and I really enjoy her character. I think she has so much like spunk and the ability to think for herself. So basically the plot picks up after some of the things that happened at the end of The Bear and the Nightingale, which of course I won't mention. And this leads her into Moscow, where her older sister and her older brother are. So those storylines get picked back up, because those storylines were set up at the beginning of The Bear and the Nightingale, when it was really setting up the family and the characters. And so we pick back up those, which I really liked, because I enjoyed those characters and I wanted them to come back into her life. Because the whole storyline is very action-packed and very entertaining, and more action-packed, I would say, than the first book. But this was a solid 4-star for me. I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. There's just some things about the end that I didn't appreciate as much, and I'm not going to get into those because I don't want to spoil it or give you too much. So I highly recommend it. I'm super excited to get to the third one. I don't know when I'm going to pick it up, but I almost want to like hold on to it so I can stay with the characters a little longer, because I know that's the last one in this series. Okay. So this next book was my absolute favorite. I really enjoyed it. And what's funny is this is the book I did not think I was going to pick up. And the book is As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. So the reason I didn't think I was going to pick this up is because it is about the Spanish flu. It's about the 1919 flu. And the thing is I had gone through all those other books, like I said at the beginning, and they just weren't holding my attention. And this was the only one that I was finding curious enough. I don't know what that says about me. Most people are avoiding stories like this, but that's really the only story I wanted to read. And so I picked it up and I loved it. I loved it. The storyline is about this family. So this family that used to live kind of outside of Philadelphia, they moved in because of an opportunity that the dad had to work for his uncle and potentially inherit his business. And this business was a mortuary. He starts his job, they set their family up in this house, and it's a family with 3 girls, the mom and the dad, and they had lost a baby boy and they were still grieving over that. And so it kind of sets up their characters, and I really love the characters. I just love their little family. I love the dad and the mom. There was hard things going on, but there was a depth to the characters that she wrote in right away, and I was hooked immediately by this family. And then the Spanish flu hits. The parts of the book that involve the flu, I'd say, is maybe a third of the book, and that part is definitely intense. It's scary. It's so quick moving. They didn't understand what was really happening, and it just went from house to house and spread all over. And that was definitely an intense part of the book. The family takes in an orphan, 4-month-old infant, that they start to love him and just care for him and bring him up, and he just ends up being this really bright spot in their life. The ability to care for this just giggling, beautiful little baby with all of this heartache and death around them was something that allowed them to live through, to survive it, to push through. Strange to call a book about the Spanish flu heartwarming, but it really was. It's a really, really good read, and I recommend it. And I realize that a lot of people will not take my recommendation during this season, and that's totally fine. I loved this. 5 stars, hands down. So the last book I picked might make a few of you laugh, because I did a try a chapter video for a mystery book. And I read through the first chapters of a bunch of different books, and I picked one. I picked the chocolate chip cookie mystery, and it was good. And I started it, and again, it's one of those that just didn't hold my attention. Or I picked this one up because I had it, and I thought it might actually be something that held my attention. Because when I read the first chapter, I felt a little scared, and after reading the whole thing, that first chapter was the scariest, and the rest of it was actually quite entertaining. And so this book is about a school. It's about a school for the gifted. It jumps between 1936 and present day. And what happens in that first year is that this rich man who opened the school, his wife and his daughter are kidnapped. And the person who claims the kidnapping signs it with truly devious. Present day is this girl named Stevie. It's her first year. She just got accepted to the school, and she has this passion to solve crimes, to become a detective. She loves mystery novels. She is really quite gifted at kind of noticing things about people. And so she comes with this idea of she wants to solve the kidnappings from 1936. And then one of the students on the campus in present day is killed. And that is the plot line of her wrestling with that, seeing if there's something to be solved. Is this attached to the 1936 kidnappings? And so her character is really endearing. I think that's probably why I like this book, is I like the Stevie character. Giving it a 4 stars. I might bump it to 5. I'm not sure. I think the only thing that bugged me was that she was the detective. She's like 16 or something like that. And the police aren't figuring these things out, but she's figuring some of these things out. And that bugs me. But then at the same time, if I think about it logically, this is a YA book. And it's a book about a girl who wants to be a detective. And if the police did their jobs, this wouldn't be a book. But I really enjoyed it. It held my attention. I kept wanting to read it. And there's actually a couple more, which I'll probably pick up this next month because I got them from the library before the library shut down. And so I might as well read them now that I was brave enough to start this one, which I wasn't sure if I would be brave enough when I was doing that try a chapter video. That is what I have for this month. It was really a good reading month. I really enjoyed it. A little distracted, but really fun. So thank you for watching. Please consider liking, subscribing, all those things if you like what you see. And I will see you again in the next video. Okay, take care.